things, the chances of miscalculations inevitably go higher as time goes on.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank you. Mr. Perry.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I thank the panel for their attendance today. Just listening to my good friend and his questions, Ms. Gottmuller, I was going to ask a question about China, assuming that we do a New START treaty which encumbers the United States and Russia. What is the impetus for China to constrain themselves? What is the impetus for Pakistan to constrain, or anybody? And you said that without the treaty, there would be no constraint, there would be no leverage. But what is the leverage if those other countries aren't included, but America and Russia are constrained?
As my colleague, Mr. Vadi, pointed out, sir, the Chinese have so many fewer strategic nuclear delivery vehicles, very much smaller strategic nuclear arsenal. I really think the incentive for the Chinese can be developed in the near-term period, getting a handle on their intermediate range systems, which are the ones that are the so-called carrier busters. They're the ones that really concern our military as well. So if we can create an incentive for the Chinese to start to constrain those systems because they're worried about proliferation, Russian proliferation of such systems, perhaps the United States, India, Pakistan, et cetera, that's where I think we could begin to get some traction with the Chinese on limitations and constraint. But because their arsenal is so much smaller in terms of strategic nuclear weapons, it's very hard to think about how they would agree to constrain when the U.S. and Russia are up at 700 delivery vehicles and they are way, way down in terms of numbers of ICBMs. Forgive me, sir, I don't have the numbers at my fingertips, but very, very few numbers by comparison with ours.
Doesn't it give them a kind of a blank check if we're constrained and they don't have to be concerned with any current constraints at all? Doesn't it give them a kind of a blank check to work on both?
I think we have to be very alert to them. We call it rushing to parity, that they would try to rush to parity with
what would
the
stop
United States
them?
and
I don't
Russia.
see anything that would stop them except resources.
Yeah, well, at the time, their doctrine stops them. They say they are committed to only no first use and a second strike, capability, and that's it. But we have to keep a very sharp eye to see if they are changing that policy.
Sir, if I could
yes, sir.
Just make a quick comment. Pakistan's come up a couple times. I mean, the deficit that Pakistan has military with respect to India, and India is their existential threat, can only be made up to some extent with their nuclear arsenal. That is their ticket to the future, and that's how they see it. And getting at that long term, that's not going to happen quickly. I spent a lot of time in Pakistan tied to the Afghan war specifically, and so it's a huge challenge. My own view of that is this is the responsibility of a country like India to figure out how they're going to make that work, and until we see them starting to work together in a way that incentivizes both of their future, Pakistan is going to continue to build them just to take care of itself. Otherwise, and it is a deterrent for them because on the conventional side, India could overwhelm Pakistan just like that.
So it seems to me, based on the conversation, I'm trying to figure out what the right answer is on New START because I hate to constrain ourselves, and I understand from Mr. Myers and from others that there haven't been infractions on the current treaty that we know of, which is curious but good. But I am concerned about leaving some of the other actors out while we pursue this, constrain ourselves, and don't engage them at all. And I wonder if this is an opportunity that we should take to maybe they're not included in New START, but maybe they're engaged in something separately at the same time, since it's going to be topical. Everybody's going to be watching, and it's an opportunity to say, we're not absolving you folks either. And I agree, Ms. Connor. They're not going to. They might rush to parity, and they're certainly not going to want to be constrained where they are, knowing China in particular where we are. But I'm not sure we see the entire picture. We're looking at the entire picture right now, and I think that's a little concerning. Just out of curiosity, because there have been infractions from Russia on other on other agreements. Why do you suppose that there either are none or we have found none? And I think generally the consensus is we feel they have been good actors on. Why is that? Because they put their attention elsewhere? Because I don't believe it's all goodwill. Sorry, I just don't. Yes, sir.
I'll get a start. I know the Admiral has discussed this a little bit earlier, and I'll leave time for him to respond. But they have as much to gain from this arms control process as we do. They truly do. They are extremely worried and concerned about our strategic systems. They understand, and I think make a differentiation between intermediate and strategic. I also think that there is a level of recognition that, given our capabilities, that we would catch them. None of these are definitive, and none of these are the exact, no questions asked, that's the answer to the question. But I think these all make up part of the Russian psyche. I think it's all part of their decision-making. I think at the end of the day, they also understand the benefit of the United States being constrained. And having that helps them. No matter how they are always trying to get the edge, just like we are, no matter how they're always trying to come up with a new, improved, better, what have you, I think at the end of the day, they have as many benefits of this as we do, and they don't want to see it go either.
Thank you very much. Ms. Bamberger.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you so much to our witnesses today for being here. And I'd like to start with a question for you, Ms. Godmuller.